It's been roughly a month since Cyberpunk 2077 released, but it is worth comparing to CD Projekt Red's previous open-world epic, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. How do they stack up in terms of immersion? More specifically, what does The Witcher 3 do better? Let's take a look at 10 things here.
Would you wait, sir, for the dribble to subside?
Makes no difference to me.
Justice. Stunt. Fight.
NPC variety and culling. The vast majority of NPCs in Night City are seemingly generated at random, which can lead to differing hairstyles, fashions, cybernetics, and whatnot. However, because the game can't handle displaying so many at once, it takes to culling NPCs whenever it can, sometimes right as the player looks away. The Witcher 3's NPCs came off as static for the most part. They didn't have the most complex schedules or patterns, but at least they didn't randomly disappear and reappear in front of the player. Side quest design and choices.
Yeah?
It doesn't matter what you tell him. It doesn't matter what you think of doing or do. You can't change anything.
What?
We know who you are. We know what you are. We know what you want. You are playing with fire. Don't dare cross the line.
There are some genuinely good quests in Cyberpunk 2077, both in the main story and on the side, though none of them compare to the Bloody Baron or A Tower Full of Mice. But it quickly became obvious that there's not much choice to be had, except for the ending or where you start out. By comparison, The Witcher 3 had several different outcomes for a number of its quests, whether it was saving the orphans of Crookback Bog or who would rule Skellige. Choices you made during certain interactions would also influence which ending you received, with each presenting genuinely different fates for the world and Geralt. Third-person perspective. Many had concerns for Cyberpunk 2077's shift to an exclusively first-person perspective, and with the game's launch, it's easy to see why. When you have the option to fully customize V and can't see their appearance, let alone the different clothes they have equipped, the attachment just isn't there. This probably wouldn't have been an issue if V's personality was subject to some kind of player choice or had more third-person moments to be seen in. The Witcher 3's third-person view always reinforced that you were playing as Geralt, but still created some attachment since you could actually see all of the different cosmetic changes made and gear equipped. It also didn't hurt that despite having an established personality, one could make various impactful decisions for Geralt, which felt natural and didn't deviate from his character. All of this allowed for the player to sympathize with him while also reinforcing the game's role-playing aspect. Stealing. Because there's no real concept of stealing in Cyberpunk 2077, you're free to take whatever you want, whenever you want. No one will get angry or attempt to exact vengeance on you. Stealing from vendors has no consequences because, well, it can't be done. By comparison, in The Witcher 3, it's at least possible to steal things and have the local guards chase you for being such a jerk. Speaking of which, when you did inevitably cause a crime, you wouldn't see guards spawning out of thin air in the middle of nowhere. Another point in The Witcher 3's favor. Changing hairstyles.
Looking for a barber? Well, you found one. Welcome. I'll plough and shave the gentleman's noggin for half price.
Give me a haircut. As long as your hands aren't too shaky.
It's been said enough times, but it bears repeating. In a future that touts heavy body modification, whether it's new cybernetic limbs and arms or full chrome skin, not being able to change your appearance is ridiculous. Even in The Witcher 3, which dealt with a fixed protagonist, you can still have different haircuts and facial hair styles. Such customization is apparently impossible in Night City. Secondary characters. Your mileage may vary on this front, but The Witcher 3 had a higher number of likable secondary characters than Cyberpunk 2077. While characters like Panem, Judy, River, and Takamura certainly stand out, one still remembers the likes of Vesemir, Dandelion, Kira Metz, and so on more fondly. Maybe it's because of the overall longer story of The Witcher 3 that ensured that you had more time to become familiar with its secondary characters. Maybe it's just better writing for the cast as a whole, or better side quests. Regardless, it remains to be seen if we'll look back as fondly on Cyberpunk 2077's supporting cast as we do for Geralt and friends. Weather and day and night cycle. Reports are somewhat varied on the rain in Night City. In some cases, it looks like little more than a filter with no real effects, but others have reported seeing more realistic raindrops. But everyone can more or less agree that The Witcher 3 handled its day and night cycle much better. It's not too strange to see the time of day in Cyberpunk 2077 suddenly shift from bright and sunny to the middle of night. Skipping forward in time also doesn't naturally move time forward. If you scare an NPC and then skip forward to the nighttime, that same NPC will still be running away. In The Witcher 3, time actually advanced forward and affected things like shops being open and more. Minigames. Weirdly enough, despite Night City having so many distractions, there aren't any minigames to speak of. You'll find a litany of arcade machines but can't interact with them in any way. At least The Witcher 3 had Gwent, which was its own fully developed collectible card game with numerous opponents and even tournaments throughout the world. Enemy variety. One criticism that The Witcher 3 faced shortly after launch was in the variety of enemies, but only because some key monsters from The Witcher 2 didn't make the jump. There's still a pretty healthy palette of foes to disperse, from rock trolls and golems to basilisks, grave hags, and wyverns, to say nothing of the humans or beasts that you can fight. Cyberpunk 2077 has cybernetic humans, regular humans, robots, and mechs, but they're fairly one-dimensional in terms of strategies used and tactics required to disperse them. Less to explore. While Night City is more dense relative to its overall size, the much-touted vertical space is only really important for missions. Sure, you can climb on stuff and get some decent views, but there isn't a whole lot to explore. The Witcher 3's world is more spaced out and open with a variety of locations to explore, from cities and small towns to underground caves and dense forests. This doesn't even account for locations like Skellige, which must be traversed to by ship and have large mountain peaks to go with their bustling shores. Driving upgrades. Finally, with such a wide selection of vehicles in Cyberpunk 2077, you'd also expect there to be some way to upgrade. Surely you can change out engines, equip more armor, or improve their handling, right? Well, unfortunately you can't. It's not even possible to change a car's looks, whether it's a new paint job or interior design. CD Projekt Red already confirmed that the feature was cut months before release, but not being able to change anything at all is still somewhat a shame. However, in The Witcher 3, as you might have guessed, it's possible to customize Roach with all kinds of useful gear. These include saddles for increased stamina to sprint for longer periods of time, saddlebags for increased inventory weight, and blinders for increased fear level, thus ensuring he's not so easily spooked by monsters on the road. While it's not the most in-depth form of customization, you can't suddenly have War, aka the flaming horse from Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare, it's still something. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.